5-star games on the Atari 2600. I mean, this video might be a bit polemical because who's to say what a 5-star game would be considered as on the 2600? Now, I grew up with the 2600. I'm a huge fan of it for sure. And so many games were either arcade ports or these quick little experiences. There were some games that went a little bit more in depth, but for the most part, they were just games that you could just kind of pick up and play for the most part. So by all means, let's check out all the 5-star games on the Atari 2600. Make sure you watch this video all the way to the end to let me know if I missed your favorite game. And one of the beautiful things is if you don't have a video sponsor, you are your own video sponsor. Check out the homebrews I saw on my website. I even wrote a book about breakfast cereal, the 80s and 90s, perfect Atari age. In fact, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Jr. cereal, and so much more, they're all in this book. And as much as I love it, no, E.T. will not be on this list. Sorry. We can start the list, though, with several games that need to be on this list just to kick it off, just to get the, the important ones out of the way first. You know, save the best for first is what I always say. And Kaboom is a game you have to have if you're playing games on the Atari 2600. I don't know what it was about this game, but I just thought it was super cool. I like the fact that you have like old school Robert. We're talking about like the Hamburglar up there. And you play these little buckets of water, and you have to kind of capture these bombs before they hit the floor. At first, it's a little, it's like, okay, I get it. And then out of nowhere, he just drops them quick. And you gotta catch him quick. One bomb hits the floor, that's game over for you, and then you have to, well, you have 3 lives anyway. And the more lives you lose, the more buckets you have less to use. That wasn't proper English, but I'll say it anyway, I'm not going to edit it. You know what I mean. Kaboom is the awesome. Gotta talk about Pitfall, of course, another game from Activision. Activision made some amazing games on the 2600. And Pitfall, no exception. One of the first kind of, adventure-style games here. Not adventure-style the way that you're thinking of adventure-style, like for computers and stuff, but not really Metroidvania. But this game didn't have an ending. I was kind of sad to find out that it just loops forever, and it's a high score getter, but it's still so fun just to go through and see what the next screen's going to have for you, whether it be these holes in the ground or whether it's going to be, these kind of ponds with alligators sometimes, or this appear and disappear. You can also go down and go underneath, and that'll be a different path for you, a different route, and yeah, just so much fun to be had with Pitfall here. Adventure, for sure. Now, our generation for the 2600, this was our Legend of Zelda. You just had to make shift and make do with the graphics you had to give you the best experience possible. And you know what? Still a super fun game. I still play this game today. Also one of the first games with a randomizer, believe it or not. Like nowadays, it's like, you see people streaming on Twitch and YouTube. It's like, oh, I'm playing Zelda randomized, where things are in a different place. This game came equipped with that. That was the 3rd level. Level 1, super easy. Level 2, it was set, but bigger, but, whatever. And then level 3 was just a randomized thing that sometimes I don't think you even beat it. Like, I think sometimes the chalice that you're trying to collect is inside the yellow castle, or that's where the key is, rather. Like, the key is inside its own castle. You can't go inside, it's alright, you just reset it and, select it again and start somewhere else too. But so much fun to be had with adventure. Still love this game today, super awesome. I'd put Yar's Revenge in there as a 5-star game. Simple idea, I suppose. It's kind of a shooter. It's like a, single screen. You have to kind of shoot away at the border. And I'm also working with that weird kind of flickery, it's 60 frames, recording at 30 frames, so you're going to see a lot of missing frames with my Elgato kind of, doing the best it can under these circumstances anyway. But you have to chip away at the shield of the enemy base here, I suppose, and then when you do that, as your bug ship, you can either shoot at it or even just kind of chip away at it by like chewing on it, I suppose. You'll get your little magical bullet here. When you shoot the core, it blows up, you move on to the next stage. Fun game. Still like it. Now, when we got our Atari, combat was the pack-in, and I love me some combat. Downfall is this game is forced as a 2-player simultaneous game. You do have to play this game with someone else. You want to play this game with someone else, but you also have to play this game with someone else. Like, there is no single player option. Different ways of combat, too. You have the tanks. That's always a popular one, too. Different playing fields as well. Sometimes you can have, like, ricochet bullets, which is always kind of fun. Sometimes you can have, like, the invisible tanks as well. You can also take it to the skies with the airplanes. Or my favorite one was this giant airplane versus the 3 mini planes. It just looks silly to me. You also have the jets later on, too. A lot of fun to be had with combat. We played this one quite a bit at our place. How about River Raid? You ever check out River Raid? Another great game from Activision. This was one of the first kind of scrolling vertical shooters I remember playing. And maybe this was what sparked my love for these vertical shooters. You have boats, you have other things that are in your way, the bridges as well, you have to blow those up before you get through. You do have fuel in this game, and when you fly over the fuel, that's when you get your fuel recharged. Or you can also just blow it up too. Nothing wrong with that either. Not a whole lot needs to be more talked about River Raid, but River Raid's a great one for sure. Simple enough, this game is called Firefighter. I might include this on the list too, just because I remember having a lot of fun with this game, and had a couple of ideas of how you could play this game as well. There's somebody trapped in the building that's on fire, and you have to put out the fire. So you have to put out the fire, and you also have to rescue the person trapped in the building before the fire goes all the way to the very top. You can also just rescue the person before the fire goes all the way to the very top. But you also want to, put out the fire. That's usually what I did. I'd put out all the fires first, and then I'd rescue the person. It was a lot easier that way. But fun game on this one. I do love me some Firefighter. Keystone Capers was a lot of fun. If you've ever played Bonanza Brothers, I was like, every time I talk about Bonanza Brothers for the Genesis on this channel, I'm always like, oh yeah, it reminds me of Keystone Capers. Well, Keystone Capers reminds me a lot of Bonanza Brothers. Like, that's how that comes around. You play the Keystone Cop. You just play this cop, and you're trying to stop the bad guy. But you're in this building, you're in this room, you're in this warehouse, whatever it is, 3 stories, and you can run faster than them. But you have to make sure that they don't make it to the roof for them to escape. You have a couple of escalators in the way. You do have an elevator in the middle. There's all these other things that are trying to, prevent you from getting to the guy. And when you get to the guy, congratulations. And then it moves on to, a similar style stage with more obstacles and stuff like that in the future. Demon Attack was one I had a lot of fun with too. This was, there's been a couple of games like this. This came from the time when this style of space shooting type game with the aliens, trying to beam down, was a popular genre, like super popular. Like, why wouldn't it be? If Street Fighter 2 came out during this time, you'd have a bunch of Street Fighter 2 clones like we had in the 90s. Well, since Space Invaders was so popular, let's get all the Space Invaders clones, so to speak. And Demon Attack to me was one of the better ones anyway. Each stage has a few waves of these enemies, but it only shows 3 on screen, and they just dump bullets on you, and you have to shoot them. And the more it goes on, the more the enemies change. And I just remember having a lot of fun with this one. It just was kind of creepy and kind of cool. Cosmic Arc had a couple of gameplay abilities with this one, which I thought was pretty cool. First round was you have to shoot the asteroids. It's going to come out you left, right, up, and down, and you have to push the joystick left, right, up, or down to shoot them out of the way. That was, part's pretty easy. And then the second part is you have your little satellite, your little beacon, your little, your little side hatchel story thingy, whatever your little mini UFO, I suppose. And you have to capture the guys who are down there. And the more you do that, then the more other stuff gets in your way too. And then again, just gets harder and harder the more you play it. A lot of these Atari games are going to be this way. Just nice, simple, easy idea of a game, and then it just gets progressively harder and harder until you just can't beat it anymore. That's how that works. Or you might flip it too. I've done that before, like Mario Brothers on the Atari. I remember playing all that on you go to level 99, it goes to level 00, back to level 01, and it just keeps going and going. But I'm sure you can do that with Cosmic Arc too, probably. I've never played it long enough to find out. I'll throw Dragonfire in as a 5-star game on the NES. Super fun game on this one. Again, a couple of different gameplay styles. First, you have to invade the castle. You have the fire, the dragon breathing fire, above and below. You can jump or you can duck. And you gotta watch out for those. But when you make it to the castle, then you have to steal the dragon's hoard of treasures with the dragon there at the bottom. And if you're not showing, then he's chill, just pacing back and forth. But as soon as you're out of your little thing, before you can steal all the treasures, that's when he starts, shooting his fireballs up at you, and you have to just be super quick about it, grab everything you can, go through the door, and then back onto another castle. And the more you keep going, again, the faster it gets, the harder it gets. Love me some Dragonfire. Gets to the point after a while where you can just barely even see him. He's just so fast. I love it. They had a few racing games on the Atari 2600. Not a lot, but a few racing games. And probably my favorite one was Enduro. Enduro was just, I liked it because, again, you can beat it the first time you play. You just kind of go through the motions and go through it. I forgot how long it takes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. Not very long. But I just thought it was kind of a cool idea where the more you drive, the scenes change. Like, the seasons change, which I thought was really, really cool. Because, we played pole position, which is just more of a, go around the track. A couple of other driving games like that too, you know, like Night Driver, which was just, you know, a game completely dark. But this one actually had, you know, the seasons change, or the sunsets and stuff like that too. So it was just kind of fun to see with Enduro. Frostbite's a game I've talked about a few times. I love me some Frostbite. I'd throw that in as a 5-star game because super addicting too. You jump on these little icebergs, and that's what creates another brick in your igloo. When you have your igloo completely created, you can go inside the igloo and then move on to the next stage. You have different enemies that are coming at you as well. There are some other items, not items, like fish, I guess. Pick those up for extra points too. And again, the more you just keep jumping on these things, and you can also hit your button to make it change direction to whatever one you're standing on. You just keep going and going and going. And the more you go, you know, the different, you know, there might be a bear in the way, there might be crabs and stuff like that in the water. Yeah, again, starts out pretty cool, just gets harder and harder. If you're waiting for me to talk about Hero, well, wait no longer. Here's Hero. We can talk about Hero for a little bit. This was one game I didn't have growing up on the Atari 2600, but I was able to grab later in life. I was familiar with it, but I never had it, if that makes sense. So I'm not looking at it through the nostalgia goggles by saying like, ooh, you know, I loved this Atari game that no one's heard of because I happen to have it. No, this was a game I didn't have. And after I played it, I was like, oh, I totally get it. It's totally cool. It's just, you're not spelunking, but you're going down to, you know, save the people. But depending on which path you might take, it might be a dead end or might make it harder for you. You don't know that until you go through it. You know, or maybe if you memorize the patterns after playing it so long, that's fine too. But you have your little helicopter pack here, and you can, you know, fly back up as needed. Your little gun to, you know, remove enemies out of the way too. And your dynamite, of course, to blow up walls as needed. Hero's super cool. Definitely want to check it out. The Smurfs was one of those games that a lot of people who had an Atari also had the Smurfs. Or maybe even a ColecoVision. This is the Atari version. Similar on the ColecoVision, I suppose. I would throw that in there too. It was just cool enough, just fun enough. It was nice to see the different stories, nice to see the different stages, the different levels. Even just like the different graphic tricks they could do with an Atari game, like the background, how it has like the different lines fade into different, you know, colors and stuff like that. They didn't have to do that, but they did, just to, you know, make it a little bit more interesting with the limited color palette that it had. And I thought it worked out all right. I mean, you know, pretty simple concept of a game still, where you have to, like, you know, rescue Smurf at here. Yeah, but the Smurfs, there you go. Wouldn't be the 2600 at the time without a few arcade ports. We could talk about a few arcade ports that I think I would put them in the 5-star range here. We could talk about Moon Patrol. Moon Patrol was always cool in the arcade, and the Atari version, it played fine. It played fine. Jump over the holes, you know, the craters in the floor. You have your gun shoots in front of you as well as above you, because you'll have some aliens and stuff above you, and you'll have rocks in front of you that you'll have to take care of as you're patrolling the moon, I suppose. It is Moon Patrol after all. Jungle Hunt was one of my favorite arcade games. Whenever I see it in an arcade currently, I will play it every single time. And that's the other thing too about the Atari games, especially the arcade games that were also on the Atari, because if you didn't grow up with Atari, or if you weren't from the time and you grew up later, you were born later, then you know, maybe you didn't even know these were arcade games. So that's got to be cool too. Jungle Hunt was cool. It had 4 different stages you could go through to rescue your girlfriend. It's always the case, right? So your first part, your little you know, vine swing that you got going on here. Then you got a swimming part. You can actually slash these alligators from below. You got to make sure that you keep your oxygen though. Your air. You actually have to come up for air, which I thought was I was like, ooh, it's like real life. You get to swim forever. Then you have the boulders part. This was always my least favorite part. The smaller boulders you can jump over. The bigger ones you can jump over if you time it right, or you can try to duck underneath them. Harder to do on the Atari than the arcade game. This stage is actually harder on the Atari than it is in the arcade, but what are you gonna do? So much so, I didn't even get to the 4th stage. I'll leave that to you when you actually finally play this game. The 4th stage, you have to jump over the cannibals to save your girlfriend, but there you go. Jungle Hunt, in a nutshell. Love me some Jungle Hunt. Definitely a 5-star game in my book. We can talk about Centipede as well. Centipede actually plays very well on the Atari 2600. Millipede does too, but we'll talk about Centipede at least. If you're not familiar with Centipede, as you can tell by the gameplay here, you got your character that's shooting the centipede, but depending on when you shoot it, it might break off and become different segments that you have to figure out too. The little bricks that are in the way, those are supposed to be mushrooms that you can shoot out of the way. And of course the spider, shoot that out of the way. There's extra obstacles, extra stuff to get in your way. That's always the case with games like this. Very, very fun game though. And it controls fine. It actually has a little bit of momentum to simulate the trackball. When you play this game in the arcade, you have a trackball. And in this one, when you push left, you start to move it and then you move a little bit faster. So it kind of simulates that trackball feeling a little bit just with your joystick. Berserk, in my opinion, may have had the closest arcade to Atari 2600 graphic port of any of the other games. Because simple graphics, but still super fun. You got this maze, and you have to shoot these robots that are out of the way. The robots are electrified, the walls are electrified, and you do not have to kill all of them. You can actually just kill some of them or kill none of them and move on to the next stage through the maze. There is no ending to the maze. It just gets harder and harder the more you go. And when I say harder and harder, I mean that the robots just get faster and faster. That's really much how it goes. You do not have a neck in this game. That actually might come to your advantage. Without a neck, you can actually have these bullets go right through you. Yeah, just for fun. That was always a challenge for me. I always like to do that just for fun. Same with Frogger. Now, again, you're going to get a better experience in the arcade, but at the time I was just like, oh, Frogger in the arcade, Frogger at home, plays the same, good enough for me. And Frogger plays extremely well on the Atari 2600. Just got to make it across the road. Sometimes it has like the little circles that are in the water. Those are supposed to be turtle shells. And the blue ones are the ones that kind of like sink back into the water. So you have to like, you know, not stay on those so long anyway. Love me some Frogger. Always love to see it in the arcade too. Vanguard was a game I played mostly on the Atari. I didn't even know it was an arcade game until later in life when I saw it at I think it was like a Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, you know, later in life. But we had it on the Atari when I was growing up, and I played it quite a bit on the Atari, except for there is a final boss. There is actually a final boss in this game, and of course when you beat it, you just, you know, start over basically. I could always get to the boss. I never knew how to defeat it until like later when it's like, oh, you just have to shoot here. That's all. That's all it was. But it was so quick before you died. I couldn't just quite comprehend what I was supposed to do. But I don't know. I just thought it was a fun game. You shoot up, down, left, right, and it changes directions too in this game. Like it goes from a side-scrolling shooter to a vertical shooter back to a side-scrolling shooter. Vanguard, super fun. And yeah, you know, I would put Space Invaders in here too. Space Invaders is kind of like the OG arcade game, but it just plays so well on the Atari 2600. It looks bigger, you know, the graphics are a little bit slightly different, but not too bad. Less characters on screen because it has to accommodate for, you know, how many characters you can have on an Atari screen for, you know, TV stuff back in the day at that 4:3 ratio. The more you defeat, the faster they go. I loved it when you got 4 of them because the 4 of them would do this little pattern. And for some reason, I just thought that was cool. And then, of course, when you eliminate the last few, then this goes super fast and you move on from there. And there are so many different options. I've already done for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and still have more coming up for like TurboGrafx 16. So make sure you're subscribed. We'll do those videos coming up quick.